Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is module 11. We're comparing Hinduism, which we studied last week, with Jainism. Let me share my screen if you give me 1 second. Can you all see it? Let me start here at the beginning. So this is I have here, and I'll post this Google Slides presentation on Canvas so you have access to it. Just a little bit of a timeline of Jainism. The reason why I put this in, starting all the way back in 877 BCE, is that I want to reiterate that perhaps despite Hinduism's preponderance in India, Jainism is an incredibly ancient religion. It's what, 3,000 years old, give or take. And there have been emperors, there have been different Jain empires throughout the subcontinent, not just what is currently India. Importantly, the most sort of significant of them is the Gupta dynasty, which was sort of around the time of the fall of Rome, 320 to 600 CE. One of their major texts, and we'll talk about it in a second, Jainism was written around 1,000 years ago. It took until the late years of British rule in India in 1927, when the court ruled that Jainism was distinct from Hinduism, which seems like it should have been sooner. And you'll see that as we sort of talk a little bit more about the religion. And it wasn't until 7 years ago that India awarded minority status to Jainism, which seems like, again, it took quite a long time. Hair thing. It's less than 1% of the world's population. There's about 4 million adherents, which means, of course, it's even smaller than Judaism. Largely northern and western India. So these are still largely Hindu parts of the country, but this is where it's the largest. There's two main sects, and we'll talk about them later. The largest of them is the Svetambara. We'll talk about that down the road. Has a number of different sects. The primary among them is the Agamas. You see here a list of major figures. I'm not going to quiz you or ask you to identify each of them, just sort of I like to provide background context for the religion about which we are speaking. There are three main pillars of the religion. There's ahimsa, which means non-violence. We'll talk about violence a little bit as we get towards the end of this presentation. Akinatavada, which means not stealing. And that means not stealing, obviously, physical possessions from one's neighbors or friends or surrounding individuals, but also from the earth. That's sort of important. And then there's aparigraha, which means non-attachment. There's a lot of reasons why people in India in general and Jainism in particular take a largely vegetarian diet. Meat is available, but it's a largely vegetarian diet for Jains. But these three main pillars are sort of important among those reasons. There's some major texts. I already mentioned the Agamas, and I put some just lists here just to purpose: the Kava Sutra, the Tattva Sutra, which I put there on the right of your screen, the Akaranga Sutra, and the Dravya Samgraha, which of course I put there on the left. That's the one that I mentioned was written between 900 and 1000 CE. Temples, for those of us who are perhaps not all that familiar with Hindu or Jain architecture, look not so dissimilar from the types of buildings we would see in India for Hindu shrines and temples. But it follows a similar liturgical practice. There's leadership, worship, there's temples, there's prayer. There should be another bullet point here. There's religious gatherings. Each household will probably have a shrine to some deities. And there's specific types of attire that are important for Jains to be wearing. They believe that the world has no creator, will exist forever. This is not like Hinduism, but is in fact like Buddhism, which we talked about last week as well. The largely, sort of summarized, and this is making it very, very simplistic. The goal of life is to accumulate karma so that each successive reincarnation will lead you closer to salvation, closer to what in Hinduism we would call nirvana. Very specifically, each soul will have 8.4 million incarnations before it will move on. That's a specific number. Don't know enough about the religion to tell you where it came from, but it is a specific number. There's really two versions. There's Digambara, which are sky-clad. The monks wear no clothes; they're clad only in the sky. Female monastics do wear sort of a cloth And then there's Svatambara, the white clan. They dress all in a sort of white woven cloth. This is the larger of the two divisions. And this is where I wanted to sort of wrap this up, is that it's similar, and especially to those of us who perhaps are not all that familiar with either religion, seems quite similar to Hinduism, but there's some differences. Deities are not the same. There's some different. They're similar in concept. Some of the features are overlap. We fall in the middle section of the Venn diagram, though they're interpreted differently in each religion. Both feel that even though they are ultimately non-violent religions, violence is okay in self-defense. You're not so non-violent you're going to allow yourself to simply be destroyed. Differences in Jainism, karma is a tangible thing, whereas it's invisible. Hinduism is sort of a concept, an idea, something amorphous and ephemeral. In Hinduism, there are multiple paths to enlightenment, where in Jainism, there's one specific specified path. That's what we talk about, the 8.4 billion incarnations. And of course, worship is different. Different deities. Why do you worship them? How do you worship them? For what purpose? What kind of offerings do you bring? All of these things make them quite different. Now, I just want to talk briefly about the project. You'll see on Canvas that I posted the lead sheet for your final project. Your topic selection form is due by the end of the week. There's a Google form that I want you to fill out. And you're going to need to, we're going to schedule times for each of you to meet with me at least once so that I can sort of get a sense of where you are and what you're doing. I'll post a Google form for that as well. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Send me an email. Other than that, have a great week.